Welcome to the Leaders of Leaders podcast. I am Diana Daniels, your host from YPO Latino and YPO Leader Europe. And today's episode is brought to you by the YPO Leadership Development Network. You know, more than 70% of CEOs says that leading across cultures is now one of their biggest challenges. And yet it's also their greatest opportunity. And in today's economy, borders may exist in maps, but not in boardrooms or markets. And that's why this episode, Leading Without Borders, is so important. And I couldn't think of a better guest than Alan Hepburn from YPO Singapore Integrated chapter that has spent over 3 decades in shaping leadership in hospitality across Asia. He was the founding director of the 3 on the Bond in Shanghai, which is recognized as China's first true luxury lifestyle brand. And later, he scaled the award-winning Kidzania concept across Greater China and Southeast Asia. Today, he is a CEO, advisory board consultant in Asia, and Alan works with founders and CEOs and boards to build high-performance cultures on global growth strategy. And beyond business, he's been a driving force inside YPO, serving on the global board and chairing the international committees and transition CEOs worldwide. So, Alan, welcome to the Leaders of Leaders podcast here in YPO.
Thanks for having me.
Well, many leaders that are listening today are navigating transitions across their industries or geographies. And if we look back at all you have done across these beautiful luxury brands that you've developed across Asia, what skills or mindset help you adapt so successfully from London to Asia and from operator to advisor?
Yeah, look, good question. I mean, I think the broad umbrella would really be, in addition to the technical skills that obviously we hope people have, is having some kind of what might be called cultural intelligence. Because as you move from, even within countries, from city to city or region to region, or then country to country, or, continents to continents, things change. There are some universal truths, both business and outside of business, but there's a lot of nuances that change. And that's not only with the team that you're leading, but that's also with the customers that you're trying to address and accumulate and obviously attract. So having that cultural intelligence makes a lot of difference in terms of the success any leader is going to have.
You see, what I see today is that leadership is what I would say borderless, And when you see in our organization, in YPO, half of the members run business across multiple countries. And that cultural intelligence, I guess is very needed in as a big skill for these future leaders. So from your experience, Alan, what does leading without borders really mean in practice? How CEOs can develop this cultural intelligence to thrive across the different markets and teams?
Yeah, obviously a huge question, Diana. I mean, if I try to be, brief, for me anyway, the couple of the key components is being intentional about building trust. I mean, trust doesn't come on day one because you've got a boss title or a CEO title. Building trust is something that needs to be worked at. It needs to be earned. It's cumulative. It takes time. But if you can actually create that, things can get done. And there's always going to be a gap in any organization between the leader and the rest. There always is. And then particularly it's amplified if somebody is from a different country. And so an outsider comes in as a leader, the gap is just naturally bigger at the beginning. And so I think being intentional and recognizing that's important is massive. It kind of plays into the other one, which honestly for me is probably one of the biggest challenges in all organizations across the world, whatever industry you're in. It's communication. Most companies don't have an intentional plan for what communication looks like on the inside. They usually have a good plan for the outside, but what does that look like up and down the organization to make sure that everybody's heard? That's something that needs to be really intentionally thought about by the leader, and recognizing that is probably going to be one of the most important activities is increasing the communication across the organization as an incoming leader or an existing leader. Massive. And then probably the last one, which again flows from the first two, is just building teamwork. if you don't have a team, then people are pulling for their own objectives, their own reasons, and whatever unifying goal you're trying to create is ultimately going to be diluted. So, those are just some. Obviously, there are others, but I see those as very fundamental.
I love this. Is the definitely trust, communications, and teamwork. I guess that this is a key for a CEO or a chairman leading a board. One of the things that is developing in the new world order, in the new geoeconomics of our world, Asia Pacific is projected to account over more than 2/3 of the global growth by 2030 in the world. And AI and technology are reshaping every industry, Alan. So when you look at the future, what trends do you see shaping how CEOs will need to lead in the, let's say, next 5 to 10 years? And especially, what should they be preparing to?
Yeah, look, you've obviously mentioned the buzzword AI. I think what has changed probably in the last 2 years is that the senior most leader needs to be the one that takes responsibility for the AI strategy. Now, every company, every organization around the world, in some way and somehow, to a greater or lesser extent, will be encompassing AI in whatever they do. But nowadays, it doesn't need to be, and it frankly can't be, the head of your IT department. It needs to be the CEO, the decision maker, the ultimate leader. Technology has come a long way, and so you don't need to have a degree in IT to do that. But taking responsibility, taking ownership from that now, and whatever that looks like, prioritizing, whether it's upskilling or outreach or the well-being of employees or economizing or efficiency, the CEO needs to take responsibility, and they need to recognize that becomes part of their job.
I love this because I guess that as a CEO, you always need to stay agile, and then see where those big blind spots are. And I guess that taking responsibility on not only the technology shape, but also on the AI implementation is huge. Then that gives me or give me the space to talk about another, what you call buzzword. We spoke about AI, and if we speak about diversity, I guess that today diversity it goes beyond gender. It's cultural, it's generational, it's political, organizational, and you've chaired boards and advised founders and coach CEOs across, I guess, all of those many different contexts. What will be your advice, Alan, to leaders on how to turn that diversity into a strategic advantage instead of becoming a friction?
So look, I think, the world is ever changing. And if everybody on your leadership team looks and sounds like you're probably not getting the full picture because your customer base doesn't look and sound like you. I think, striving for diversity, for me anyway, is beyond just ticking boxes. There are certain boxes that are mandated in some countries, and that's definitely as a nudge to move people in the right direction. But I think, honestly, what any of us as leaders would benefit most from is having the diversity of thought, the diversity of skills, the diversity of experience, and the diversity of networks. So what people look like sitting around the table, fine. But really, honestly speaking, you can look at some TV networks these days and you can look at panels. They all look different, but they sound the same. So I would challenge leaders to bring people into their executive committees, to their boardrooms, to their leadership discussions with people who genuinely have diversity of thought, because that's really what you need. The world is changing. And frankly, if you don't have an agile mindset, and many organizations now are building organizational structures which look very different from the ones that were around 10, 15, 20 years ago. Agile organizational structures are very different. And you would need to have diversity of thought if that type of structure is going to be successful for you. And in a world where 5-year plans don't exist anymore, having that diversity of opinions and thoughts in the boardroom, the discussion room, the excos, wherever the decisions are made, is going to help you navigate what you don't know.
This is so important, Alan, because I guess that we're transitioning into boards where they used to be kind of like the friends with, the pals of the golf course or the friends from the whatever same network, and not necessarily that will give you that diversity of thought that you're referring to. So it's so important, isn't it?
Well, it depends on the purpose. I mean, if the purpose of your board that everybody agrees with you, Diana, then you bring in your golf buddies or the people you went to school with. But if the purpose of your board is to create organizational impact, strategic impact, growth, then you actually need people who have different thoughts from yourself. So it really depends. And that sometimes challenges business leaders because in many situations, they don't want to hear a different idea, much as they may say they do. But really, these days, things are different in every market we're operating in, whichever country you're in. And here in the unicorns that were not around 3 years ago, if you don't have people who can give you some light on that, who can shed some directional input on that, you're not really going to be embracing the current market you're operating in. So yeah, you actually need to challenge yourself. And I refer to it as like herding cats. And herding cats is hard, it's difficult, and it's sometimes a pain. But you actually need to be a herder of cats these days, in my view, not soldiers.
Yeah, I really like this. And maybe on the thought, like if you're hearing or you're not hearing disagreement in the room, you might be in the wrong room, right?
Yeah, and sometimes people are not comfortable with that. And so, I would say the leader of the future needs to be able to suck that up, embrace it, and say, I need to be able to hear that. And we know in YPO, as we get into forum, the biggest gift is being vulnerable. I think the reality is taking that vulnerability that we can show in forum and bringing it into the business world and saying, I don't know everything, tell me. If we can do that, I really believe we're going to hear better solutions.
I love this. You see, our listeners always appreciate practical tools. So I would like us to get a little bit specific on maybe if there's a leadership framework or board framework that you often use or recommend to CEOs for building that high performance cultures across borders. Is there something you want to recommend to them?
Yeah, I guess, look, as a framework, why are we talking about anything? If we're talking about it because it's important, great. So what's the impact of doing whatever we're talking about? What have we already done? What are the options we're considering? What assumptions have we made? And what questions do I have of my diverse, hopefully, group of executives or whoever they are? Ask them the questions. It's not about reporting. Here's all the data. Ask them the questions. Give them the context and ask them the questions. Because too often I'm finding, in whatever industries I touch, the people are not getting the opportunity to actually leverage the people in the room. You brought them there for a reason. Actually give them the time and the context, and then ask them a couple of questions and let them think about it and weigh in on that. And then take the aggregate of that and then make your own decision as a leader. I
love this. What about a book? If you could pick just one book that every global leader should read this year, what that will be?
Yeah, one is hard. I think this. I mean, the guy who honestly, my guru in terms of referring me books, I'm a big fan of Adam Grant. So he does regular book reviews every year, and so I try to read, or at least the summaries, but I try to read a couple of the actual books. I'm sorry, the old one that we've all heard about since we were a kid, From Good to Great. I still think that from anybody who's trying to grow a business, the one that was written by Jim Collins, I still think there's so much learning in that if you genuinely want to build a business that's sustainable. If you're my age, probably From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks, but that's a different kind of genre. So, yeah, look, as we all know, there's a lot of them. I would say the best thing on books, Diana, we're in YPO, as we all know, or maybe we should know, get abstract. Mm-hmm. We get that stuff for free. So if you decide you want on whatever topic, make sure you tick those boxes and connect and get the books you need or the summaries of the books you need and make yourself smarter and better.
Good. Okay. And then on that practical tools that we want to give to our listeners today, I would like to ask you, what is the single best piece of advice that you ever received that maybe helped you guiding your leadership today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think my father only ever gave me. I'm not him. I've been giving my kid advice way too much. Both of them. He only gave it to me once, and he just said before I left home. He said, "Never take something from anybody unless you can afford to repay it." And then his other little caveat was, "Always love your mother. Nobody else will love you like she did." So I have to say, I think both of those things have stuck with me.
Very, very good. All right, so let's shift gears for a moment. And I got this quick fire round for you. The 10 short questions, no long explanations, just the very first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, let's do this. Okay. Leadership in one word, Alan.
Passion.
Passion, I like this. A country that transformed you or transformed the way that you see the world.
So many, but definitely China.
The biggest lesson you learned from failure.
Do your homework on people before you do business with them.
It's so important, yes. A habit that keeps you centered when your life is borderless.
Lists. Just make a list of what we need to do today and tomorrow. Just keep that. I have a list every day. Last thing I do at night, first thing in the morning is check my list.
Very good. Checklist. Love that. A value that you've always carried into any boardroom.
Be authentic. Just be authentic.
I love this. Already. So what about is your favorite place in Asia to recharge?
Bali.
I love Bali too. Nice. Already. What is that one skill that every CEO must master, especially in this age of AI?
Listening. But listening to understand. Listening to understand.
That's so important. All right. Number 8, the most memorable boardroom moment that you ever had.
I witnessed a management company the management organization who ultimately had board seats. They would not accept senior leadership appointments coming from the outside. And the advisory board came and literally spoke to them and said, "Look, we don't work in your business, but if you do not take experts from the outside, because you do not have them in your company, you will not be." This was a company that was number one in their state in the US for more than 70 years. "You will not be in business in the next 3 to 5 years." So it was existential. And they told them directly. And those guys turned around and they went outside and recruited experts.
Oh, that is so cool. And you made a difference right there. Okay. Number 9, one thing YPO has given you that you couldn't find anywhere else?
So much. I mean, so much. I think it would... in touch with our emotions. As guys, we tend not to even have emotions in the business world. And so YPO has actually helped me to be in touch with emotions.
Wow, I didn't think about that. You are absolutely right. It's so important. Okay, number 10. If your leadership could be summed up in a book, what would be the title of the book?
Both Ends Burning. So if any of you know Roxy Music, that's a famous song of theirs. Candles burning at both ends. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. And hopefully one day I'm going to look into a bookshelf of a library at a bookstore. That'll be nice. Alan, thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey and wisdom with us. For me, the 3 takeaways that I have from you is that cultural intelligence is the new leadership currency, that the future belongs to those leaders that are borderless, that can embrace the shifts and technology, especially AI, and invest in their people and their culture, especially from those advisory external boards into their boardroom. And then diversity is not a checkbox, should be a strategic advantage that leaders should learn to turn different perspective into innovation and resilience. So those are the 3 things that I'm taking home with me from our conversation today.
It's always a pleasure to meet you, Dana. You're a light in our lives in leadership. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. And before we close, is there any personal piece of advice or perhaps a message that you would like to leave with the leaders of today and tomorrow who are listening to us right now?
Look, we don't know what we don't know. And in a world where the information that's given to us is getting more and more curated, either from our management teams or from anything we're out there on the internet, is try to get more random. Just get into situations where you're hearing different things from different people that you don't normally hang out with, you don't normally connect with. The more random your connections are these days, the more likely you are to hear things that you wouldn't normally hear. And that might be super valuable.
Yeah. Well, living without borders goes beyond crossing countries. It's about crossing limits of culture or perspective and even ourselves. Because our world is being rewritten by the technology, by the skills, by these global shifts. And I really want to thank you, Alan, for guiding us through this conversation. It has been enormous, great, and very, very insightful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Diana. Good to see you.
And thank you to you, all our listeners, for joining us today in the Leaders of Leaders podcast brought to you by the YPO Leadership Development Network. Until next time, keep yourself living beyond limits and living beyond borders. See you soon. Diana Daniels here. Ciao, ciao.